Down upon earth he came, with his lame, omnipotent motion. And with uneven steps, absorbed and silent, the master worked, employed mid the wheels of the cars, as a smith in his smithy. But it was death and bale that he forged, not the bronze and the iron. Stark, like a fire obscured by its smoke, through the spear casts he laboured, helping Ajax' war, and the Theban and Phocian fighters. Zeus, to his grandiose helper next, who, proved and unmoving, calm in her greatness awaited the mighty command of her husband. Hera, sister and spouse, what my will is, thou knowest, O consort. One are our blood and our hearts, nor the thought for the words of the speaker waits, but each other we know, and ourselves, and the vast, and the heavens, life, and all between, and all beyond, and the ages. That which space not knows nor time, we have known, O my sister. Therefore our souls are one soul, and our minds become mirrors of oneness. Go then and do my will, O thou mighty one, burning down Troia. Silent she rose from the seats of the blissful, Hera majestic, and with her flowing garment and mystical zone through the spaces haloed came like the moon on an evening of luminous silence, down upon Ida descending, a snow-white swan on the greenness. Down upon Ida the mystic, haunted by footsteps immortal, ever since out of the ocean it rose, and lived gazing towards heaven. There, on a peak of the mountains, alone with the sea and the azure, voiceless and mighty she paused, like a thought on the summits of being, clasped by all heaven. The winds at play in her gust-scattered raiment sported, insulting her gracious strength with their turbulent sweetness, played with their mother and queen, but she stood, absorbed and unheeding, mute, with her sandaled foot for a moment thrilling the grasses, dumbly adored by a soul in the mountains, a thought in the rivers, roared too loud by her lions. The voice of the cataracts falling entered her soul profound, and it heard eternity's rumour. Silent its gaze immense contained the wheeling of aeons. Huge-winged through time flew her thought, and its grandiose vast revolutions turned and returned. So musing, her timeless creative spirit, master of time, its instrument, grieflessly hastening forward, parted with greatnesses dead, and summoned new strengths from their stables. Mained they came to her call, and filled with their pacings the future. Calm, with the vision satisfied, thrilled by the grandeurs within her, down in a billow of whiteness and gold and delicate raiment, gliding, the daughter of heaven came to the earth, that received her glad of the tread divine, and bright with her more than with sunbeams. King Agamemnon she found, and smiling on Sparta's levies, mixed unseen with the far glinting spears of haughty Mycenae. Then, to the mighty, who tranquil abode and august in his regions, Zeus, while his gaze over many forms and high-seated godheads passed, like a swift fleeing eagle over the peaks and the glaciers, when to his eyrie he flies alone through the vastness and silence. Artemis, child of my loins, and you, O legioned immortals, all you have heard. Descend, O ye gods, to your sovereign stations. Labor rejoicing, whose task is joy, and your bliss is creation. Shrink from no act that necessity asks from your luminous natures. Thee I have given no part in the years that come, O my daughter, huntress swift of the worlds, who with purity all things pursuest. Yet not less is thy portion intended than theirs who o'erpass thee. Helped are the souls that wait, more than strengths soon fulfilled and exhausted. Archeress, brilliance, wait thine hour from the speed of the ages. So they departed, Artemis leading, lightning tasseled. Ancient Themis remained, and awful Dis and Ananke. Then, mid these last of the gods, who shall stand when all others have perished, Zeus to the silence obscure, under iron brows of that goddess, griefless, unveiled was her visage, dire and unmoved and eternal. Thou and I, O Dis, remain, and our sister Ananke. That which the joyous hearts of our children, radiant heaven moths flitting mid flowers of sense for the honey of thought, have not captured, that which Poseidon forgets mid the pomp and the roar of his waters, we three keep in our hearts. By the light that I watch for, unsleeping, by thy tremendous consent to the silence and darkness, O Hades, by her delight renounced, and the prayers and the worship of mortals, making herself as an engine of God, without bowels or vision. Yet in that engine are only heartbeats, yet is her riddle only love that is veiled, and pity that suffers and slaughters. We three are free from ourselves, O Dis, and free from each other. Do then, O King of the night, observe then with time for thy servant, not my behest, but what she and thou and I are forever. Mute, the darkness sat, like a soul unmoved through the aeons. Then came a voice from the silence of Dis. From the night there came wisdom. Yes, I have chosen, and that which I chose, I endure, O Cronion. Though to the courts of the gods I come as a threat and a shadow, even though none to their councils call me, none to their pastime, none companions me willingly, even thy daughter, my consort, trembling, whom once from our sister Demeter I plucked like a blossom torn from Sicilian fields, while fate reluctant, consenting bowed her head, lives but by her gasps of the sun and the azure. Stretched are her hands to the light, and she seeks for the clasp of her mother. I am night, and her reign, and that of which night is a symbol. All to me comes. Even thou shalt come to me, brilliant Cronion. All here exists by me, whom all walk, fearing and shunning. He who shuns not, he am I, and thou, and Ananke. All things I take to my bosom, that life may be swift in her voyage, for out of death is life, and not by birth and her motions. And behind the night is light, and not in the sun and his splendors. Troy, to the night I will gather a wreath for my shadows, O grower. So in his arrogance dire, the vast invincible death god, triumphing passed out of heaven with Themis and silent Ananke. Zeus, alone in the spheres of his bliss, in his kingdoms of brilliance sat, divine and alarmed. For even the gods in their heavens scarce shall live who have gazed on the unveiled face of Ananke, heard the accents dire of the darkness that waits for the ages. Awful and dull grew his eyes, and mighty and still grew his members. Back from his nature he drew to the passionless peaks of the spirit, throned where it dwells forever uplifted, and silent and changeless, far beyond living and death, beyond nature and the ending of nature. There for a while he dwelt, veiled, protected from Dis and his greatness. Then to the works of the world he returned, and the joy of his musings, life and the blaze of the mighty soul that he was of God's making, dawned again in the heavenly eyes, and the majestic semblance comforted heaven he beheld to the green of the earth was attracted. But through this space unreal, but through these worlds that are shadows, went the awful three. None saw them pass, none felt them. Only in the heavens was a tread as of death, in the air was a winter. Earth oppressed, moaned long like a woman striving with anguish. Ida saw them not, but her grim lions cowered in their caverns, seized for a while on her slopes the eternal laughter of fountains. Over the ancient ramparts of Dardanus' high-roofed city, darkening her victor domes and her gardens of life and its sweetness, silent they came, Unseen and unheard was the dreadful arrival. Troy and her gods dreamed secure in the moment, flattered by sunlight. Dim to the citadel high they arrived, and their silence invaded palace marble shrine, where, stern and white in her beauty, armed on her pedestal, trampling the prostrate image of darkness, mighty Athene's statue guarded imperial Troia. Dim and vast they entered in. Then through all the great city huge rushing sound was heard, from her gardens and places, and in their musings her seers as they strove with night and with error, and in the fane of Apollo, Laocoon, torn by his visions, heard aghast the voice of Troy's deities, fleeing from Troia. So the flaming lords of her households drive in a death rout forth from her ancient halls, and their noble familiar sessions, ghosts of her splendid centuries, wailed on the wings of the doom blast. Moaning the Dryads fled, and her Naiads passed from Scamander, leaving the world to deities dumb of the clod and the earth smoke. And from their tombs and their shrines, the shadowy ancestors faded. Filled was the air with their troops, and the sound of a vast lamentation. Wailing they went, lamenting mortality's ages of greatness, ruthless Ananke's deeds, and the mortal conquests of Hades. Then, in the famed Palladian, the shuddering priests of Athene entered the darkened shrine, and saw on the suffering marble shattered Athene's mighty statue, prostrate as conquered. But on its pedestal rose, o'er the unhurt image of darkness, awful shapes, a trinity dim and dire unto mortals. Dumb they fell down on the earth, and the life-breath was slain in their bosoms. And in the noon there was night, and Apollo passed out of Troia.